Welcome to Soulful Latte podcast, a weekly conversation between two sisters to help us and our virtual friends online, like yourselves, grow in life and in faith. We are your hosts. I am Qudsiyah.
And I'm Samia. Welcome to episode 4. Today we're talking about having a heart that's connected to Allah. And while I was researching for this episode, because this is such a deep topic, that I came upon this hadith, which I've read a million times, but it kind of said something different to me today. And I want to share with you, Qudsiyah, and for you guys. The hadith is, there lies within the body a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. And if it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. Verily, this piece is the heart, and is found in the Muslim. So the heart is the core of all of our relationships, especially with Allah. We talk about human relationships and we say, oh, I really feel something special for this person. Or, I really love this person. And that is all associated with the heart. So the heart is central to not only religious conversations, but also secular conversations. So when I look at the heart being mentioned this way, it is nothing new to me. It is something that I grew up with, it's some things that I have conversations with. I can see it being mentioned in greeting cards. So when I was actually looking through the book, The Purification of the Heart, the phrase really stuck out to me in which Sheikh Hamza said, purity of the heart never survives a passive relationship. One must always guard his or her heart. And I love that we're covering this in this episode because we're going to share with you our personal barriers to connection and what are some different ways where we can establish a connection into our own lives.
Thank you for your reflections, Samia. It's so interesting, isn't it, how the heart occupies such a central position in Islam? I actually read a verse in the Quran where it was mentioned that Allah set a seal on a group of people's hearts, their eyes and their ears. And I found that so fascinating because the one thing that came to my mind was that perhaps our hearts, the eyes, and our ears are windows to the soul, and how it all begins with the heart. So the heart seems to be in charge of everything and how much we understand, how much light we take in. And it's almost like if we take care of the heart, we allow for more capacity to receive guidance and light. And what I really, really, really find beautiful is that the heart can change and it can be renewed. And that is the beauty of repentance. Whenever I read the Quran, I always come across verses that call for repentance. And it's really beautiful how Allah encourages us to just turn back to Him, and that we can have hope that no matter how much we've added little dots to our hearts, that it can be cleaned and it can be purified through the process of repentance.
It just becomes all new again. Interestingly also, when we hear about a person and they're like, oh, how did this person pass away? And from a heart attack. It's like such a profound thing. Even in our minds, like, oh man, like nothing could have been done. And it's just this idea of just something that just ends when the heart ends. It's very one of those things that really make me think for a moment. And so having that heart be connected to Allah is very important. And why is it needed? Why is it that we can't live without having a good connection? I mean, like we were talking earlier, we were trying to record this session and it was about, the connection wasn't right. We were hearing things wrong and there was a lag and delay and everything. And so it's kind of like this, like, why can't we have that low connection? Because it's frustrating. I was frustrated and I was like, let's do this over because it wasn't correct. So yeah, we could survive, but then you would have a horrible podcast to record, And so I think that same goes down to that connection with the heart, with Allah. We can have a low connection, or we can have a connection that's, sometimes here, sometimes there. But in the end, we're just not going to be fulfilled human beings.
I really love how you connected that to the podcast recording. One thing that I remember from Sister Yasmin Mujahid's talk when I attended was this concept of being in this world empty. I'm paraphrasing. She says that we all come to this world with a sense of emptiness because that emptiness is created from our separation from Allah. And so each and every one of us has this innate need to fill this hole in our hearts. That hole is often filled with different things such as wealth, status, and all of the material things. What really interests me is that even the most successful people And even the wealthiest people don't always have peace and tranquility in their lives. And Allah tells us as well that it's only in the remembrance of Him that the hearts find peace. And she was saying that our heart is created by Allah, and the only one who can fill our hearts is Allah. So there is nothing that we can do materially that will fill us the way we think it will. As long as we have the connection with Allah, our hearts will be full. So to maintain this connection and this fullness, of course, because we live in the dunya, there are distractions and there are barriers. So what are some things that are a barrier to this connection?
For me personally, if I was to talk about my own barrier in my current season of life, it definitely is my health. And I don't hide that. I talk a lot about my health situations on Sunnah Living. And because it is such a big part of my life, and whenever there is a big part of a person's life that is not God, then obviously there's a problem, right? And so for me, I understand, the famous hadith of 5 before 5, that we appreciate, these things before we lose it, and health is one of them. And it is so crucial. And I look at those of, my family members and for my friends who don't have a lot of physical, things holding them back. And I'm like, please guard that and, do all good that you can while you have the energy, the time, the resources to do it. And so for me, there is a barrier of connection, then that is health, because when I'm feeling that, weight of my health situations and my thyroid being really annoying, then I can't really focus on Allah as much as I want to. Then I can't really be like, oh, let me pray tahajjud today, but I can barely get out of bed in the morning. So those kind of things do come in. And I'm really trying to find a balance where I can look at that health barrier and turn it into a connection in itself. And there's a lot of mental work that I'm personally still working on.
I find it so admirable, Samia, how you share your struggles with all of us. That takes a lot of courage, and that also comes from vulnerability. And I take so much from that. You're truly so special to Allah, Samia. And there's so many of us right behind you learning from you as well.
What I find comfort in is that we're all so individual and unique to Allah, and like Allah judges us according to our potential and with the tests that He's given us, which I find very comforting.
Definitely.
One thing that I've found to be a barrier to connection is busy being busy. And when you have lots going on, it can be quite easy to be consumed and to forget that we need to make that space and we need to craft out that space in our day to connect and to silence the mind so that the heart can connect. It almost seems like everything else is more important than our condition of the heart. And inshallah, we can put ourselves first as well and our hearts first and actively try to still be in remembrance or just awareness, even if we're busy, and craft out that space because it is important.
And I think the reason is because we don't really see the effects of it immediately. It's like the remembrance polishes the heart. So we don't see it until, it's fully polished, and that takes some time. And so, I can make dinner in 10 minutes and it's like, oh, I have dinner on the plate. But if I'm doing remembrance, it's a whole different, I don't really see it immediately kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's true. It is a very gradual process.
It's worth it though, because we've tasted it to some extent,
We all find connection in different ways. As an addition to the prescribed obligatory acts of connection, the focus is always towards what Allah has prescribed for us first, though. What has worked for you personally, Samia, and what are some things that you would like to do more of?
Exactly what you said about, the addition to the prescribed obligatory acts. I really do see the things that, the extra things we do as like a vitamin. If I don't eat the vegetables that I'm supposed to eat throughout the day that are coming from the ground, then I can take 20 different vitamins and it just won't work. And as they do say now, like the ground is depleted of vitamins. And so no matter how much you eat anyway, you're still going to be missing the quality minerals that you won't get. And so it's kind of like you have to do them two together, but the emphasis is definitely on and I feel all these extra things help with the prescribed ones because they're helping me build the connection. And one thing that actually I do struggle with is the connection during prayer. And I think that if I worked on the connection outside of prayer, that it could help me establish that focus and that's needed to really formulate that connection in the prayer. On the other hand, when I'm making dua in the moment, so in the moment where I'm like, oh, I really would need help in this, or I really want, for Allah to give me ease, to make this easier, to make this task more efficient. That moment, like I can probably recite the prophetic duas, throughout the day, but the dua that I make in the moment is so much more powerful, and that's the one that I really feel. Sometimes where I just notice, like for example, the chicken's giving eggs, and sometimes I'm so grateful for those eggs. I'm like, oh, thank you, Allah, for the eggs because I really needed a breakfast, and this is the easiest eggs for me, is the easiest breakfast. And so one of those things, and also, I sometimes I'm spending time with my husband, and it's so rewarding, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Allah, for that. So those moments, I find that connection is so profound, and then I love it. It's that times when I really realize how Allah is really giving me more than I deserve in this life. And another way that I really find connection is Quran. And for me, like I mentioned, the prayer is struggle. For me, the Quran is not that much of a struggle. For me, as far as connecting while reading it, I mentioned. And if I can have a set number, of minutes, then I'm going to be like, okay, set a timer, I'm going to read for this amount of time, or I'm going to read these number of ayahs. And I can just sit down and recite. And to me, that is amazing. I wouldn't mind doing that the entire day if I didn't get tired, So yeah, those three things for me has been very profound.
I love the dua in the moment as well because I relate to that. And it's just amazing how you realize how much Allah is giving you and how blessed you actually are, because often I find that He's given me so much that I never asked for and that never occurred to me to ask for, but He still gave so generously. And then there's some things that I asked for, but He's given me so much more than I asked for, which again then puts me in awe.
It really is. It puts you in a state of mind where nothing can really bother you because you're so focused on that little blessing that you focused on at this point. What about you, Qudsiyah? What are some things that you do?
Some things that I do have done and want to do more of are, my number one would be writing raw letters to Allah. So this is a practice I started last year, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a result of just feeling lots of things and trying to cultivate journaling. Whenever I would feel loads of emotions, I would just write to Him, really raw, really vulnerable, complete heart dump on a paper, basically. And afterwards, I would feel so light, and I would actually feel more connected to Him. And I feel more connected to Him every time that I write these letters, because I feel like it's a conversation. So I really love doing that, and it's really beautiful, alhamdulillah. Another way that I find connection is when I'm doing little acts of kindness, where I get to connect with a human being, and just a smile, like just exchanging a smile or sitting down with them and laughing or talking, is really just so beautiful in that it makes me realize how many different kinds of people there are with their own stories in their lives. It's just amazing how Allah is taking care of each and every one of us. And that's something I'm always reminded of. The third thing for me would be learning the attributes of Allah. And I was doing Al-Fatah the other day. It means the opener. And while studying this attribute, I found reliance in the fact that Allah is ultimately the one who opens doors, and He's the opener. So He's in charge of opening my heart if I let Him. And He's in charge of opening all the doors that I think are closed, all the doors that I don't even know exist in my life. I just need to surrender and allow Him to do the best that I know He will do and not get in the way of myself. That really helps me cultivate reliance and connection in that way, because it tells me that I need to stop chasing and trying to open my own doors, because Allah is the opener and He opens the doors that He knows are best for me.
That's beautiful. In all the things that we mentioned, in the end, what's really crucial is the sincerity. So we can do 20 different things, but our heart is not there, then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So I would like to tell myself, I think, and see if you agree with me, Qudsiyah, is that if we can just pick one thing, obviously after doing the prescribed ones, but if we just pick one thing and really work on perfecting it and really making it work, then I think we should be okay.
Yeah, I think Allah sees effort, and it's not as much about the outcome as it is that you're trying. And even the smallest efforts count. And it's okay that your connection is up and down. That is how the heart works, and that is how this life works, and that's okay. As long as we're just making an effort to open our hearts to Him.
Exactly. So I hope we are able to learn some new things today and we can apply it. Now we would love to hear from you guys. What are some things that help you connect and some barriers that you personally face? And maybe share with us how you've been able to overcome some of the barriers in the past.
If there's something that you've benefited from today, we'll be so grateful if you would share it with someone you know and subscribe to the podcast. You can also contact us at Soulful Latte Podcast on Instagram, or write to us at soulfullattepodcast@gmail.com. We would really love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.